the beginning it was going to be different because we were acting almost as the equivalent of an agency. RhinoFX is a high-end visual effects studio. We work in the commercial film and television markets. We specialize in photorealism. When we do computer graphics, we work with very high level of detail for models, textures, lighting setups. Some of our renders can take days to complete a few seconds of screen time. If it was a normal project, we were acting as the sole agency. That meant that we were responsible for the creative. We went through many concepts, and some of these concepts were heavy on visual look. As we got more into presenting these projects, it seemed to be that what they wanted was more of an animation-based project. And in particular, they wanted something that was going to work for an audience that was familiar with gaming cinematics. They wanted a brand, they wanted a character, and that character was driven by market forces. It had to be female. That seemed to be a prerequisite, and from there it was wide open. We did lots of conceptual ideas, and gradually we'd take elements. The storyboard and previous stage was very useful. It gave us the chance to work out narrative, pace, camera angles, etc. And it also gave ATI an idea of how many elements they were dealing with. From this they gave us a breakdown of how big things could be, such as the model sizes, the texture sizes, how many bones we could use in the models.
Models were kept very low in polygon count. We had a strict budget that we had to stick to. One for the exterior, one for props, one for characters, and we had to stick to that amount.
From my point of view, again, working with the animators was the freedom and flexibility of the mocap setup. That really allowed, from a directorial position, the opportunity to explore lots of things. We were really fortunate in our casting. We found some great people on the West Coast. Cut.
When we saw Ruby fight in real life, it looked pretty good, but we're trying to, go that extra step and making it much better, more exciting. The rig works with any, bipedal character. It doesn't matter. It could be a woman, it could be a man, it could be a gorilla. It doesn't really matter. It's just very scalable, and then you can just put it up, and then I created some ML script where it just gives you a shoulder, it creates a leg and arms, and it gives you all those controls already set. Key on the project was to work on the setup part simultaneously as Perspective was working on the mocap. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we had to do it so quick, was to create the rig right away, so then Perspective was able to give us data and for us to start working on the previs with the mocap.
Right, so we had to use a lot of extra joints and stuff to fix areas like on the character that you couldn't use stuff like blend shapes to fix. So we added here, like in the butt area, we had to add an extra joint to work with the legs when they moved in order to keep the shape there, the volume. We did that in a lot of different areas.
The way we approached facial was also a little tricky because we couldn't do, what we normally use in a commercial environment.
We controlled the jaw with a bone, and we do the facial expressions themselves as blend shapes. Some of them we were able to do a left and a right shape. In this case, we made a little attribute called crossover, which lets you, when you dial it back and forth from side to side, it smooths out the transition from left to right. So on the face, we had this idea to do some kind of free animation with the eyelids. So we set up like kind of an automatic thing that the eyelids would stay kind of at the same distance above and below the iris. So here this kind of shows a little bit of the fixes we do to the mocap data. So on the left would be the actual mocap data straight from the information that we got, and on the right is a little bit of change of pose. We did a lot of stuff like that, a little different weight shift, some slightly different timing to fix a couple things.
I was a technical director, take care of dynamic of most part, like for example parachute and hair simulations and explosion of the bridge. We approached the hair for Ruby in new way for ATI. We wanted to come up with something clever and efficient. For them, rather than use heavier system we might have in conventional situation, we found using patch surface to be the best solution. Patch surface allowed for preferred UV texture system and ability to add an IK rig we could control with spline curve data. The spline curve data was generated from the dynamics of the existing animation, plus what we added as far as gravity and turbulence. Explosion was made using a particle system propagation many sprites. We generated a particle system based on fluid dynamics and took each particle and replaced it with an animated card. By adjusting properties for lifespan and age and translating the sprite animation carefully, we came closer to a photorealistic explosion without making the render take days per frame.
In approaching Ruby's skin texture, we wanted to develop both a unique and beautiful look. The power of ATI's graphics card allowed us to put an enormous amount of subtle detail into her texture at a very high resolution. We started with the layout of the model's texture space and began building her skin tones. Texture, blemishes, freckles, and eyebrows were painted in as well, with a final layer of makeup to complete the color matte. Other textures were also created to further the level of detail, including controls for specularity, bump, translucency, and ambient occlusion. The textures were then plugged into corresponding channels of our skin shader, dictating how the final model would react to light. In lighting the characters, we were able to use a total of 3 interactive lights, with one of those casting dynamic shadows. ATI also gave us the freedom to adjust an array of properties on each light, including position, color, intensity, cone angle, and fall off. This allowed us to really fine-tune character lighting for each shot. The combination of high-res textures, custom shaders, and light rig produced an amazing real-time result. Lighting the environment called for a completely different approach. We wanted to incorporate global illumination lighting to produce highly realistic results. The problem with this is that calculations can take up to 2 days to compute, which is unacceptable in a real-time world. Maya allowed us to do a one-time calculation using a high dynamic range image, and then converted the light information into textures that could be reapplied and rendered in real time. I was definitely surprised with the amount of information that we were allowed to work with, and the funny thing is that we're using the same methods and technology that, not too long ago was used in normal broadcast and film. And it's just that real time has, had those leaps and bounds up to that technology that, it's just pretty amazing.
I think from what ATI has done compared to ours, it's pretty much to the T. They really did a good job.
It was very important for the studio to do that, to show its flexibility. All of the artists and the project leaders managed to get their minds across this problem of working in a real-time mode and really stretch it, really work to the full limit of what ATI were offering, which was surprising amount. And I think the studio really showed off its strengths really well and pushed that to the absolute limit.